And in this back cover book report, it's highlighting the book entitled The Mechanism Demands a Mysticism, an exploration of spirit, matter, and physics. Thomas Brophy, Ph.D., author. Thomas Brophy was a staff research scientist at the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics, Boulder, with the NASA Voyager project. He has a PhD from the University of Colorado, was an NSF exchange scientist with the University of Tokyo, has practiced physical and mental yogas, and was Dean of the California Institute for Human Science Graduate School, dedicated to integrating the spiritual and scientific worldviews. He has published peer-reviewed scientific articles in premier journals including Science, and his work was featured in Nature. Brilliant, important, strongly recommended. Reads at times like a Tom Robbins of physics. Jacqueline Small, author of Awakening in Time and Becoming a Practical Mystic. With this book, Thomas Brophy establishes his credentials as a paradigmatist, that rarest of thinkers whose models of reality not only enhance human understanding of their world, but give form to new historical movements by integrating several cutting-edge paradigms and by highlighting the role of spirit in the universe. The Mechanism Demands Mysticism is assured to inform, instruct, entertain, and even inspire its readers. Stanley Krippner, Ph.D., former president of American Psychological Association's Division of Humanistic Psychology, author of Dream Telepathy. Integrating the words of many holy people with scientific theories in a study of phenomena, Brophy indicates the limitations of scientific and religious dogmas. This kind of integration will become more and more necessary in the next century, which is now. Hiroshi Matayama, Ph.D., Lit. D., author of Karma and Reincarnation, head priest of Tamamitsu Shinto Shrine in Tokyo. Well, just a few pages has turned into reading the whole thing. Eminently readable and highly entertaining, or infotaining. A good book. Never thought of juxtaposing Newton and Bishop myself. Yasuhiko Kiramura, sorry for the pronunciations, CEO of the University of Science and Philosophy and director of the Twilight Club Center for Evolutionary Ethics, former Zen priest. And from the New Thinking Aloud program and Virtual You Wisdom Radio, Jeffrey Mishlove, Ph.D. and parapsychologist, writes, "Your ideas are profound. The Mechanism Demands a Mysticism deserves a broader exposure." You are opening the eyes of scientists all over. Bravo. Judith Orloff, MD, board-certified psychiatrist, author of Second Sight. And now a brief reading of the introduction so that you get an idea as to what this particular text is about. It is profound. Quote, "This book is about the scientific basis for a paradigm shift. Since Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, the word paradigm has entered the household lexicon. The concept of paradigm taps such power and imagination that it is tempting to use it for any profound theory. The word is often overused for essentially minor concepts and models. The topic of this book, The Mechanism Demands a Mysticism, an exploration of spirit, matter, and physics." We are all aware that our world is careening through changes at rates previously unimagined. It is likely that this process is not only change, but transformation. Accompanying that transformation in the world of ideas, intellect, and science is a paradigm shift. The shift is in some ways gradual and in some ways immediate, often shocking, in some ways subtle, and in some ways like a ton of bricks. Many are aware of the shift and have written about aspects of it, books about quantum questions, quantum medicine, chaos, the holographic model of the universe, and even quantum politics are all talking about aspects of the shift. No satisfactory name for the new paradigm has emerged. The term new science is loosely used, but it is often not clear what the real difference between the new and old sciences is. This lack of clear terminology adds to the general lack of clarity that is sometimes exploited by those who would peddle nearly anything New Age to a gullible market. This book attempts to define clearly the difference between the new paradigm and the old paradigm, to help us to know ourselves, which paradigm we are in and which we want to be in. For that purpose, I've proposed a name. The paradigm shift has a life of its own and will be lived regardless of the language we use to describe it. The ideas in this book are meant to clarify our understanding of the shift. Concepts offered are independent of whether the name I propose sticks, but I think it's a good name. Hylozoicism comes from the Greek word roots hylo, meaning matter, and zo or zoe, meaning life. Hylozoicism is the belief that matter is alive, that non-material influences infuse matter which need not necessarily be so infused, making it, and often by degrees, making it alive. In the Hylozoic paradigm, life is the interplay of spirit and matter. But this is not the same as vitalism. In vitalism, living things are said to be specially alive, whereas inorganic matter is dead. The Hylozoic paradigm is the realization and acceptance that matter functions in a way that is open to the influence of spirit, and that spirit is both quite real and quite non-material. Matter is quarks, electrons, protons, atoms, molecules, electromagnetic fields, light, and gravity, with everything described by the equations of physics. Spirit is non-material, and spirit can affect matter. How it does, this is the subject of this book. We can further understand the unfamiliar word Hylozoicism by considering what it is not. What is the opposite of Hylozoicism? To answer this, I'm going to coin two new words. Many will recognize the concepts behind these words as nothing new. Indeed, there is no new physics anywhere in this book. The reason for the two new words is that the old labels have gathered confusing baggage beyond their useful meanings. Also, these words together with Hylozoic form a family which I think clearly contain the basic concepts and to bring focus the different possible paradigms. First, consider Stochasticism, combining the Greek word stochastic, random, with hylo for matter. In this paradigm, the unknowable, immeasurable, and indeterminate events in nature, in matter, are believed to be actuated by purely random or stochastic processes. In Hylostochasticism, nature, matter, is therefore partially deterministic and partially random and meaningless. Meaningless to the extent that events can have no meaning other than the demonstration of randomness or the deterministic propagation of past material influences. Hylostochasticism is the standard model, orthodoxy or party line of science today, based primarily in classical physics. It is based on the so-called Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. Our second coined word is hylostatic, using the Greek-derived static, standing still or unchanging. Often classical physics and classical theism have these characteristics concerning spirit or God and matter and their apparent or non-apparent interactions. Hylostaticism is the paradigm of the mechanistic or Cartesian scientific worldview. In the hylostatic paradigm, matter, the whole world, is believed to be static and unchanging in a four-dimensional sense. In the hylostatic paradigm, the world is believed to be a great machine, like an 18th century French wind-up parlor amusement. The equations that govern the functioning of matter are considered to be infinitely precise, constant, and time-reversible. So, in four dimensions, the material world is a static, unchanging object. And perhaps classical theism's way of thinking about the God-world relationship often reflects this as well. God as an unchanging subject or object or substance. Hence we have in classical theism substance dualism added for emphasis. Continuing, the moving three-dimensional world we see can be described in the hylostatic paradigm as a simply progression of cross-sections moving through the fixed four-dimensional object world. The hylostatic view is only deterministic. We will see how, as far as scientists now know, the material world is either hylozoic or hylostochastic. It cannot be hylostatic, as was the Cartesian Newtonian world. The hylostatic description is an adequate partial description of the way things are, but the four-dimensional object world is neither fixed nor infinite, nor even fully determined. Nearly every scientist now agrees, or would agree if they study the facts, that it is an object fact that the world is not completely hylostatic or fixed or unmovable. The remaining question to be investigated then is whether the world is hylozoic or hylostochastic, and this question has not been seriously investigated by the scientific community. The largely held opinion, however, is that the world is somehow obviously or without question hylostochastic. At least, that seems the only explanation for the otherwise bizarre attitudes of many scientists toward even considering the question. Further, the common belief seems to be that the world is hylostochastic in such a way that anything that occurs in our environment and in ourselves is no different from the hylostatic, that the non-deterministic parts of events are so small as to be irrelevant. This book shows that the belief in Hylostochasticism is far from obviously or unquestionably true, and that there is more evidence that it is wrong, and then there is evidence that it is right. Also, it will be argued that the non-deterministic aspect of events is very relevant. Unquote. Author Thomas Brophy, Ph.D., The Mechanism Demands a Mysticism, an Exploration of Spirit, Matter, and Physics. Highly recommended. Excellent read.